Um, yeah, it's still dark where I'm at, or it's stormy out. So that's why I can't be seen. Um, and I've been watching all the Epstein videos in regards to the obvious cover up. And I did a blog post 1 year ago about Sarah Ransome, who settled against Epstein, and she detailed how one of the other victims of Epstein would have coffee with Sarah Ransom and describe Drumpf wanting to abuse the victim of Epstein, and how she had to go to Epstein's mansion to go be abused by Drumpf. And she described in detail what Drumpf would do. And anybody can look this up, but I did it one year ago, and I'm just wondering, like, how long is it going to take people to discover this information that details how, you know, what Drumpf, what kind of person Drumpf is. And the other thing is, like, well, if somebody goes to prison for um what, Epstein did, that's the lowest scum evil in prison. And the prison rules is that a person like that gets the same kind of treatment done to them in prison. and and yet we have somebody like that who's supposedly the leader of the free world. So that just shows how mind controlled people really are, that anybody if anybody can't recognize basic human rights. I mean, as soon as Trump is on TV, I immediately say, mute the child rapist. That's what I just say. Mute the child rapist. I've been saying it over and over whenever I hear his voice coming through the television. And so I'm glad that this issue is finally getting recognized. But I read his energy psychically back in 2016. I'm like, oh, he's a psychic vampire. And so now the cult followers of Trump are starting to realize what they got themselves into in regards to an obvious cover up. But in fact, the reason it's covered up is because Drumpf was the closest friend of Epstein for 15 years, as Epstein detailed in his interviews with Michael Wolff. And of course, Drumpf is heavily involved with the Russian mafia, as his dad was, in terms of real estate. And um, Daniel Hopsicker's last book that he published posthumously after his death, Gangster Planet, is I'm still finishing it, but it goes into more details about Drumpf and his dad, in in terms of the Russian mafia. And anyway, meanwhile, Drumpf is trying to turn the U.S. into like a Nazi Germany kind of thing, where he's promoting the white supremacist hate group, um, paramilitary fascism that's totally heinous. And um, has everybody scared. Well, especially if you're have non-Caucasian features or whatever. If you're Latino, And so this is a total violation of basic human rights. But what do you expect from somebody? That's the lowest scum of evil. It just gets worse from there. That's been my whole point. So it just gets worse from what somebody already is. Like that's the direction they're heading. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Obviously, Mother Nature is taking revenge very fast because we had the four flash floods at the same time. Four 100-year floods happen at the same time, which is like statistically impossible unless you have abrupt global warming. And there's 90 million people in Africa facing acute food shortage of food insecurity, which is another way of saying starvation. And the cutting of U.S. aid is directly threatening their lives. So the billionaire class is literally like wiping out life on Earth very rapidly. It's and then people are been mind controlled to attack the poor and the non-white immigrants or whatever migrant workers. The U.S. has always had migrant workers, but somebody is working and they're paying taxes for sales tax, and so they're actually adding to the economy. They're paying rent, and they're they're not they're being hired by legal people, the corporations. So if there's any problem, it's with the legal people, not the illegal people. So the illegal people are actually natural people that have human rights and are sovereign. But that's not the philosophy of Western so-called civilization. You have to improve the land with Freemasonic, Platonic, symmetric geometry structures, and to be considered sovereign in the U.S. That's why native people were not considered sovereign. All right, somebody's watching, so if you have a question or comment, feel free to post it in the chat, and I will respond. Okay, I lost that one person, probably. When you just have one person watching, the tracking kind of goes in and out. But I made some homebrew ginger beer. I think that was my fourth batch I've made this summer, and I think I'm out of sugar now, so I got a little bit of sugar left, so maybe I can. I got some still brewing actually, but it's just a kind of fun drink because you can barely taste the alcohol or sense it. It's like barely there, but mainly it's just like probiotics and it's carbon dioxide. So it's kind of like got some zing zing to it. And now I'm drinking some coffee, but mainly just was enjoying the full moon energy right after the solstice and getting outside to do lawn work. And I should check on see if I have any mushrooms, but it's been either too hot or we didn't have flash flooding, but well, actually, I think we did have some. Well, the rain was too hard for mushrooms, and and that's pretty much it. As far as my life, I meditated this morning a little bit, but yeah, I've been listening to different podcasts and It's quite amazing because Eisenhower had a 91% tax rate on the rich, but now nobody even talks about it. Bernie Sanders talked about it, 10 years ago or whatever. And it's kind of fascinating that it went from Bernie Sanders to Project 2025. Um, and that Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society, that's what my dad was into increasingly. It started with Reagan, and then it just kind of got worse. So it's been building corporate fascism has been building in the U.S. in a response to um, you know the social movements that Ralph Nader was leading back in the early 70s when I was just a kid. When Superman got released or in Star Wars. Anyway, so happy summer if people can survive, and hopefully the courts will provide some solace. There's been some judges ruling against Drumpf, but I'm just wondering how long will it take people to discover Sarah Ransome, because it doesn't, like, even Whitney Webb did not discuss Sarah Ransom in regards to Drumpf in her book, her 2-volume. Supposedly, everybody considers her to be like the top expert on Epstein. Well, you know, anyway, I don't know. Some people think she's just a limited hangout, like a cover up. Like she talks a lot, but she just avoids. But that's what the corporate media does, is they self censor, and pretty much anybody getting advertising, dependent on advertising, they are going to self censor because their customer is the advertiser, so they have to make a product. They have to commodify themselves and their potential viewers or listeners are their product that they're selling to the advertiser. So they don't want to say anything that's like against that tax deduction structure in general, which is basically capitalism. And so anyway, that's my morning rant.